Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. Well, I too rise to take note. Yet again, I think this is probably about the 10th time that we have risen to take note of the government's abject failure in providing any transparency to this place on something as important as the NDIS funding. And on the fig leaf of reason for the IPP is that it'll prejudice relationships with states and territories. Well, of course it will, because the minister just mentioned it. Well, the states and territories have said even that what you're putting forward in this legislation does not reflect the agreement that you had with the states and territories last year. So it will only prejudice state and territory relations because of your own incompetence and lack of transparency. So here we go again with another demonstration of the abject failure and incompetency of this government to manage not just this scheme but every single aspect of government that you have turned your hand to so far. So this motion was agreed to in September last year, and I commend Senator Steele-John for this motion. And it may surprise some in the gallery and elsewhere to know that it is one of the things that we do agree on very much in terms of the government's handling and lack of transparency on this matter. The only thing I don't agree with Senator Steele-John is the need for nuclear submarines, but apart from that, we're on a unity ticket in relation to what he said. So tonight, Labor is facing its biggest test in relation to the NDIS. For 2 years, they've conducted a review that wasn't necessary because the problems and solutions were already very, very clear. They've just shown that they do not have the ability to do it. Now, the minister was just talking about getting the NDIS back on track, catchy name for the legislation. Well, can I say this is one of the worst pieces of draft legislation I think I have ever seen. It was very clear from the report that they commissioned that took 2 years that the package of recommendations, some 26 recommendations and 139 sub-recommendations, this deals with just 4 in part. So you're not even getting the comprehensive actions that their own report requires. So they're putting out all of the hard decisions to pass the next election. So you could actually call this saving Bill Shorten legislation. So, of course, we will work with the government in good faith on this, and we will certainly be talking to our friends the Greens in relation to this. Not being the Shadow Minister, but I'm sure that we will be. So let's have a look at this legislation. In fact, first let's have a look at their lack of transparency. So as Minister, I introduced a monthly report. First thing they did is get rid of the monthly report. They now refuse, even at estimates, to answer additional estimates questions in relation to additional estimate variations. They did that at the last estimates. Exactly in the manual. Yes, we'll come to that, I'm sure, at estimates, the detail of this manual. But the last estimates, we saw the farce. The second quarter report was well overdue. The CEO had a copy on a laptop. The minister in this building had a copy, but they didn't want to release it. And guess what? They released it the very next morning so that it could not be looked at detail in terms of the Senate. They're doing the same thing again. 42 days are up. So the ministers all have it, but I bet you anything that they will not release the third quarter report until after the next estimates. Shame on them. And in the minute that I've got left, let me address this legislation. As I said, it's one of the worst pieces of legislation I have seen, and it's going to attempt to give the minister God powers that we would never in a million years have even thought to request on behalf of the minister. It is putting far too much into delegated legislation, of which there is no detail yet. Trust us, trust Bill Shorten, trust the Labor Party. We'll fill it in or later, and I will use this power wisely. Well, you haven't so far for 2 years. So not only is that, it continues the complete lack of transparency. So Senator Steele-John asked this chamber how much they're going to cut from participant plans. Well, according to the budget, $19 billion, Senator Steele-John, over the forward estimates. And when you have a look at this legislation, that is what this is designed to do, to make bad decisions. Possibly, we're not quite sure how, maybe on the base of APTOS, which it was never designed to do, while they, over the next 5 years, well, we might suddenly start having a talk to state and territories about how we will do these assessments in the future. States and territories haven't agreed to it because it's going to cost them billions. They're going to do it because they don't have the money, they don't have the systems to take on these services. Shame on you.
Senator Hughes.